Hey everyone, and welcome to the Cfea Casting Ask Me Anything. We're so excited to be here tonight. As you know, Cfea is committed to creating and cultivating and nurturing a more equitable and inclusive arts and entertainment community here in Central Florida. So we have, as a team, been strategizing about ways to make this community more diverse, more inclusive, and more equitable together. Our slogan and our tagline is that we are stronger together. We believe that. And so we are so grateful for the amazing people who come together with us to do this work. And we're so thankful for this amazing community that has committed to making sure that this is a place that is safe and just for all of us. We have a lot of work to do, guys. There's so much that needs to happen. And we're grateful that this is a community that is committed to making those things happen. So we're going to get right into it today. I am so thrilled to have two of my favorite people here with me tonight, and they are really such a great part of our mission to make this arts community more equitable and more diverse. And one of the ways that we do that is through casting. And we know, as it relates to casting, there is so much that needs to be done. So tonight we're going to dig into that. We're going to talk about challenging the power structure. That means the casting processes, the casting experience, and the casting personnel. You know, who's behind the table matters. So we're going to dive into that today. We're going to dig into that. And I'm going to warn you right now that this is going to be real, authentic conversation. You can ask whatever questions that you want to ask. And I want to encourage you right now, if you could just click the like and the share button on this live, make sure that you are sharing this with your community of friends, because we want to make sure that these conversations are not just being had, but they are also being heard. So as we dive into that tonight, we want to really may be uncomfortable to you. I want to encourage you to sit in that uncomfortability tonight. I want to encourage you to not shy away from it, not shrink back from it, sit in it, process it, think about what makes you uncomfortable, and think about how you can use that to propel you to help this community grow. Okay, so we are in for a great discussion tonight. First up is my friend, Stephen Gelpi. And he is, I'm going to read his bio because, you know, I don't just know bios off the top of my head, but I know he's amazing, and that's how I would introduce him. But he is theme park casting and talent operations. He's been in that for 10 years, over 10 years, and he's worked in the industry in both California and Florida. And he first joined the Orlando arts community in 2007 as a Disney performer. So we're going to invite Steven.
Hey, Mika.
Hey,
how
friend.
you doing?
Great. How are you? And we also have with us Joshian Morales. He is a casting director and actor working in the Central Florida area for over 10 years as well. That number 10 is pretty great here. And his favorite casting credits include Flying Lessons, Encore, and the Be Original Theater Festival at Dr. Phillips Center. So welcome, my friend, Joshian Morales. Guys, we're here. We're doing the thing. So I'm going to let you guys, I'm going to sneak on out of here, and I'm going to let you guys tell the community what you want them to know before we dive into questions and comments. So see you later.
Thank you.
Stephen, why don't you sort of introduce us, and then we'll get started with our missions and goals and our commitment statement.
Fantastic. Yes, thank you. So as Mika said, we're on the casting relations team here with Cfea, and one of the first things we did or wanted to do today in this session before we get into having a dialogue is kind of better explain the commitments that we have made as a team to Cfea, as well as some of those goals and really the mission that we have as a pair here together, but also working with the larger CFEA team as a whole. So we're going to cover that because I think it may help initiate some of the conversation later on, and perhaps again continue the dialogue, because it's important to us that the things that we do for this organization really come from the community at large, to best serve all of us. So why don't you kick things off with a commitment statement here?
Well said. Well said. Can we have that first slide pop up with a commitment statement? Beautiful. So we're going to tag team and we're just going to read through. This is information that Stephen said, we've shared already. But again, it's to share what our commitments and missions and goals are in order to then, have a better conversation later on. So our first one with our first bullet point is an overall commitment statement, and then the following 3 points kind of break it down. So the first one is, we are committed to increasing representation and equity in the entertainment industry through a more inclusive audition experience. And that it kind of explains it all and encompasses what we're trying to do overall within the casting relations team here at CFEA. And again, the next 3 bullets kind of break it down a little bit better. So, Stephen, why don't you take the next one?
Yeah, we are, as a team, committed to uniting the theater community in the common goal of racial unity and equity.
Yeah, we are committed to making the audition experience welcoming and inclusive.
And then lastly, we are committed to better preparing individuals partaking in the audition experience as a whole. So those are the commitments that we have made as a group. Now to cover some of the mission and goals that, again, that Mika also shared earlier in the month, but we did want to elaborate on some of those as well. So we can throw that up. Thank you very much. First of which here, and I guess I'll preface this again by saying, we've created some of these points because we feel like they're a great starting point for this group. However, it's nothing without the support and feedback of the people that are listening today. So we hope, it's our hope, that even some of the ideas that we have started to wrap our minds around can be fully formed by this group as we continue dialogue and continue to workshop some of these thoughts. The first of which here is to advocate and support the visibility of Black industry professionals in Central Florida. I think, really it's nothing without providing that platform. So we want to take a look, and we're starting to discuss how we can better do that as a group. I think it's no secret that we have an incredible landscape here of talent. And so it's about what we are doing as an organization to spotlight that talent, both for the professionals here, community, arts groups and employers here in Orlando and abroad, really, to showcase that talent. So we've thought through some ideas, and what we're brainstorming on right now is ways to literally do that in the form of showcases, and really just to be able to really put our talent out there for the industry at large.
Yeah, and something that CFEA already has released is the Black Book, which is such a great resource for really any producers or theater makers here in town to find the talent that they need in order to create inclusive and diverse art here in Central Florida. So that second point is creating and providing opportunities that support the development of casting professionals, both existing and aspiring. That's kind of says it all, but personally, I never saw an avenue for myself, and it wasn't until I think it was 2019 when I auditioned for you, Stephen, that it was the first time I ever auditioned for a person of color behind the table. And so it really all starts in the audition room, that inclusivity and diversity. And so sort of creating opportunities and avenues through mentorships and sponsorships for those interested in the career, but also start conversations for the development of existing casting individuals and casting professionals, whether that be inclusivity and diversity training or just information of what the talent landscape looks like of artists of color, and also providing some other network opportunities to get those existing casting directors and talent connected.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's critical to do that work. The next tier is to impact and influence organizations to continually evolve casting processes towards a more inclusive and equitable entertainment community. A part of that is accountability, and holding the organizations that we love or just just work for, in any case, to ensure that the organizations are establishing safe and inclusive practices when it comes to the audition spaces as a whole and their processes, to make sure that they're really considering and keeping everyone in mind. Another strategy to support that would be hosting, again, these are just some of the ideas and things we've talked about and action we would like to take, holding industry round table discussions, really to discuss opportunities for growth. I think a lot of this, we should be driving some of this work and some of the change that we want to see. And so we as a casting relations team want to be a funnel for that to help really the community around us grow and develop. And sometimes that means challenging and having, like Tamika's point, uncomfortable conversations, but doing it the right way so that we can work and live in an industry that we're proud of.
Definitely. And then that last point is be a safe liaison between performers and casting representatives. And again, it's that sense of that community-driven goal and mission for the efforts of the casting relations team, and really all of the efforts with CFEA, and just to really be a resource of for artists, that don't feel comfortable maybe having those uncomfortable conversations because they fear, the employer not receiving it well, getting a third party involved, in which that's part of the idea of the casting relations team, is to be that liaison between the artist and the employer. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was just to echo that. I think, in the discussions you and I have had in the past of saying, if I were to put myself in the shoes of someone who, can identify a huge opportunity for growth, or even just really feels like there was some wrong or opportunity for one of these companies or organizations to develop and learn. I would be intimidated going up against them for fear of just, I don't know. For fear of being labeled like toxic or difficult. Easy label of being difficult. And so there truly is that strength in numbers and being able to have somewhere to go, so that you feel supported.
Yeah. And I mean, I think the way forward too is to hold that power structure accountable for the actions that they're taking, and hopefully there's some good actions, and maybe there are some actions that can be learned from, but the only way to get that is to hold them accountable, so that there is real change that can benefit everybody, and that everybody can thrive in this industry and community equally.
Yeah. And like we said, those are just some of the things that we feel passionate about right now, and want to see grow here within CFEA. but a huge part of that is hearing from people and hearing where these opportunities lie. And so that was the hope in having this discussion tonight.
Yeah, definitely. So I think we're ready for some questions, some discussion, some conversation, Mika.
Hey, so I'm back. Thank you so much for sharing that, you guys. I think it's so important that the community knows what our mission is, what our goals are, and we will continue to communicate that as we grow and as we get into every sector of the arts and entertainment. We want to make sure that it's very clear, what we're working towards. And thank you so much for laying that out so eloquently for all of us. So I just want to start. I'm going to fire some questions at you. What have been some of your greatest challenges in casting? And give me maybe two examples. One on the other side of the desk as an actor, and then behind the desk as a casting director.
Yeah, I can go first. I think a big challenge in behind the table that I've personally faced is when, although I am an artist of color and a casting director of color, a lot of the times, and the majority of the time, it's actually just me as that voice, that viewpoint of people of color, right, in the room. And so even though I am behind the table and I try my hardest to advocate for people who are underrepresented on stage, sometimes it is hard to speak up when you're in a room that doesn't look like you and that might not share the experiences that you have. And so I know I've run into that, and I think we will continue to run into that until there is a true inclusivity of all roles. Whether it be the director, the choreographer, the creative team, management, producers. So until, which is work that CFEA is doing in order to push the community to be all inclusive, not just in certain parts, not just on stage, but also behind stage or behind the table, behind stage. And so, or backstage rather. And so until that is reached, there is still going to be that uphill climb, of the lone person in the room trying to advocate. And, there's so many fights that you have to go through just in casting in general. And then to add race and ethnicity into the mix just makes it that more difficult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd say the on stage for me of dusting off those memories would be just the feeling that I used to have of, that feeling that, oh, here's the show I can do. Here's the show that I'm right for. And so, already taking the opportunities, citywide or even, outside of Orlando as a whole, when you take that look at a show or a breakdown and you go, okay, then you filter it down to the opportunities that you may be right for, strictly based off of the way that you look. And so, that was a challenge for me. And if I'm being, honest with you, I think it's one of those things where as I went through the industry more and more of going, okay, well, do I love this enough to keep doing it for these roles? Mm-hmm. Feel that feeling like, is it worth it to try to just be, and then ensemble and Hairspray or something, whatever it is, or just knowing the opportunities were greatly felt greatly reduced as a person of color in the industry. And then the opportunities that were available to go to, do I really feel passionate enough about it to pursue those? And that answer is different for everyone. But then behind the table is very similar to what you said. that feeling of feeling confident enough in your voice to be able to be that advocate that we have to be, because to your point, there aren't very many people that look like us in these roles. What was that? At the end
You're
of
the one, Stephen. You're the one.
I know there are more, but not here, not in town here, but
Not in town.
but getting LinkedIn messages from someone who was like, "Hey, I saw you're a Black casting director. So am I. We should probably know each other." That kind of a thing. Even though we're completely different industries, but that's where we're at right now. But after the first session, the first forum that we had with CFEA, I think one of the comments that I had said was, my goal was, if I ever got back into the roles, and once, on the other side of COVID and stuff, that I wanted to be more fearless. And because really after all of that, what's the fear? We've really gone through a shutdown and kind of the feeling of losing everything. So why not go out kind of doing, advocating for what's right.
Right. And that I want to piggyback off of that. Another question, because that's real. That's real. In an industry that has been so structured upon and steeped in white supremacy, speaking up is a risk. Advocating is a risk. We know that. So how does one get to that place of fearlessness? What does that look like? What does it sound like? And I get that may be subjective depending on the person and their environment, but there has to be some sort of blueprint for us to be able to have our voices heard, in a way that really does not fall on deaf ears and causes an institution or a company or even individuals to change. So what do you say to that?
Yeah, I think it's all in the approach, and that's something we've talked about within this group as well. Is is when you see the opportunity there, or you see wrong, or you see something that could corrected or improved. It's all in the approach in my mind, and I think that's where the confidence is knowing you're asking the right questions. And making sure you're going about it in a way that's, that I would be going about it in a way that is going to stand up. It's going to stand up against any sort of reactions. I think one of my experiences in the industry as well is, again, we talked about that being labeled difficult. And so one of the things I've been conscious of as well is it's really easy to be labeled emotional as well. If you spoke from the heart about how you felt about something. I learned that very, very early on in my career. And so it was about kind of packaging these, feedback and issues in a way that was going to be devoid of any sort of attack on, hey, well, you're just taking it personally, or just emotional, or you're just heated, things like that. So kind of making your approach ironclad.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, before you jump in, Joshian, to add to that, especially in the climate that we are in now, that I feel like we definitely are in a much better place. But in addition to being labeled difficult or emotional, there is another word that comes up, and that word is militant. People, I think a lot of times people get labeled militant, or what is the other word? I'm just going to say militant for right now. When they bring anything to the table that counters the belief system of the dominant culture. So, I think allies, this is an awareness moment for you to really understand that just because we're bringing things to the table, just because we are bringing up, either how we feel or how we see things, what our perspective is, it doesn't mean that, oh, everything's a protest or everything is militant. Using that word or labeling our approach as militant or emotional or difficult is basically a way to divert from the way that it makes you feel uncomfortable. This stuff is not
and
comfortable.
The real issue too, diverting from the real issue. Yeah,
exactly. So you have to be careful in how we put these labels on just simple conversation and simple approach, and really try to self-reflect anytime any of these issues are brought to the table. I think that should always be the first point of action, is self-reflection. Stand back and say, am I really hearing what this person is saying? Or am I putting what they're saying through my own personal filter? Because whatever your personal filter is always going to be biased. So you may not even agree or understand, but you owe it to your coworker or your employee or whatever. You owe it to them to at least listen for understanding or engage in conversation and not put labels on what they may be feeling or experiencing. And I hope I said that, in a way that, because I think when we say things like Black Lives Matter and diversity and inclusion and equity and justice, when we say words like that, immediately they're labeled as, oh, that's that militant, or that's that protest, or that's that movement, or that, and instead of receiving it for, okay, this is a valid concern or issue that's being brought by a person of color. Joshian.
Yeah, no, I agree. And sort of what I was going to say before kind of ties into that, is that sort of that call to the allies is there. You asked originally what, how can you what's the blueprint, right? And I think now there's power in numbers, and even the slogan for CFEA was we are stronger together. And so it's about community. And so how do you make your voice have power and have weight? And when you feel like you may be alone, is know that there are people out there who share your values and share your thoughts and how things should be, and how inclusive and diverse things should be. And I think that's something that this group is doing, is creating a community of like-minded individuals, not just people of color, but also allies that we can lean and we can stand in solidarity with, to then make our voices stronger.
I love it. So we've got one in the hot seat coming in for you. This is a question from one of our viewers, and it is, so obviously we want to cast with authenticity, but there seems to be a conflict with different skin tones within the BIPOC community. So when casting, do you try to cast based on looks or based on the ethnicity of the person, regardless of their skin color? This is huge. This is huge, guys. Let's dive into that.
Yeah. Can you just repeat the last part of the question?
When casting, do you try to cast based on looks for people of color, the way that they look for a role, or based on the actual ethnicity of the person, regardless of the skin color?
Understood.
Yeah, I think, one of the things that stick out to me first is really just the legality of determining the ethnicity, anyone's true ethnicity. I believe that is against most labor laws. So there's no way to truly determine that. I think, the alternative is to find some way to stumble into awkward conversations. And I don't know that that's even appropriate, to ask someone in a room. And I can imagine that happening, and I can imagine how uncomfortable that must be. And so I think that may kind of help answer, is that, you're trying to cast true to the ethnicity, but you can't really, there's no way to confirm that,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
And I think part of it, maybe some type of solution to that would be self-identification. And, it can't be required, obviously, as Stephen said, is, against the law. But if you put it out there and ask somebody to volunteer that information, it might make the casting process easier. But I think it's also sort of another call to the allies that in a situation and in audition opportunities that might not necessarily be yours, to not go, right? I think there has been this mentality for a long time to just show up and just let the person behind the table do the work. And I think, yes, that is their job, that is our job. But I think also it's our job as actors, as people in front of the table, to say, you know what, this isn't for me. I know that this is not my truth. I don't find truth in this show. I don't see myself in this show. And authentically, I wouldn't feel comfortable doing it. And authentically, would my friends or family of that ethnicity or that race feel comfortable me doing it? Probably not. So then, taking that call and stepping away from that situation, I think it's a 50-50 where, there are ways to get that information, by voluntary asking from the people in front of the table, but also the people in front of the table, the actors auditioning, doing their due diligence and stepping away from those opportunities if it isn't theirs.
I agree with that, Joshian, and I think that there are some people out there that probably would not agree with us. Of course, we are all here everybody is trying to work. And I think we have operated under the system for a long time of just let the casting director do the work. But you said something that I think is so very valid. Is this your truth? Are you genuinely able to tell this story in an authentic way?
Mm-hmm.
And I think people need to start asking themselves that, because yes, we are actors and that involves stepping outside of ourselves. I do realize that. But knowing where we are and knowing the current structure of this system and how we've operated for so long, I think it is very valid for people to start truly asking themselves those questions. So it is 50-50. It is our responsibility, as actors to really say, will I come in and one, skew the authenticity of the story, and two, will me being here also diminish the voice of someone who this is actually meant for?
Right.
And I said that really carefully. Yeah. I tried to tread really lightly on that, but really, and then there's another thing that I just actually had a moment of teaching and awareness with an artistic director in town the other day, because we have to be very honest in the fact that skin color in the Black community is so very nuanced. It's so very nuanced because we've got the darkest of the dark to the lightest of the light and everything in between. And we know that's a result of history and, how we are, we kind of got this mixed in and that mixed in and yeah. This, that, and the other. So skin color and colorism is a very nuanced thing in our community. And I had to make the point that a lot of times casting directors or artistic directors or directors will look and say, well, it's a Black person. So what? They were black and I cast them and they were black. But let's just say, for instance, if someone did a musical about me and you were casting someone to be me, this brown skin is very much a part, this dark brown skin, rather, is very much a part of who I am and what makes me me. So to cast someone who looks like Joshian to be Mika doesn't work. And I give the example of, and I'm just going to, like I said, we're going to keep it real tonight. I give the example of the Donna Summer musical. When I saw that musical on Broadway, I was so confused because here you had two very, very fair-skinned women who were supposed to be Donna as a child and in her 20s, and then we get into her 30s and 40s, and she becomes someone who looks darker than me. We don't just do that. That's just not how that works. So I was completely taken out of the story because I was like, I'm supposed to think that this is the same person. So I think it oftentimes becomes very relevant to the story. And then let's take shows like Once on This Island or Aida, where colorism is very much so a part of the story.
Yeah.
Right.
So Timon and Aida should be dark-skinned Black women. So to put a fairer-skinned Black woman into that story diminishes the value and the authenticity of the story. And yes, she may still be a Black woman, but in part of the storytelling, it doesn't compute, it doesn't add up. And so these are things, and I know that it's a lot, but this is why it is very important to have people of color in the room, because these are the things that get missed. These are the things that get overlooked. And if you have voices of people of color in the room to be able to help you along in that, if not completely guide you in that, you have to have it. Like, it's so very nuanced that these are things that honestly, I don't just expect allies to even know.
Yeah.
So you've got to have other voices in the room.
Yeah. And to your point, I mean, it's completely valid. Unfortunately, skin color informs experience. So in a situation, Mika, if we were, casting your biopic musical, casting somebody who is fair skinned would not play justice to the experiences that you were part of during your life, because skin color unfortunately informs experience. And so, yeah, I think that's a very valid point, and colorism is very real in our community. And
yeah, and even get back to that original question. I think that having that representation behind the table, that perhaps is that's what's going to help answer that question. I think we know what we look like. I think when the first time you and I met, I was like, yeah, you look like you're in my family. I already know where you're from before we ever talked. All of that, and it's happened multiple times because that's been my experience. That's better than any sort of test or self-disclosure or some awkward conversation to say, like, where are you from? Where are you from? All of that.
From.
Well, I mean, in this question, there was a question earlier on one of the Facebook shares of this event for tonight that said, how do you turn down a role because of race? And so I think this is part of that conversation, right? It's so if you get to that point where you are offered a role and that it's not your truth, then do your due diligence and, say that, and with respect and, with tact, you have those conversations with the right people. But if you don't have those conversations with those people, they're not going to learn. They're not going to then be able to realize what they've done, to then be able to do it better, hopefully in the future.
But this is why I say that it is very important to have us in the room. Because let's just be real about it. That prevents this from happening.
Right.
Right. If you are ever in a place where a non-Black person has been cast for Aida, that's already a problem. And you can't tell me that you had any person of color in your sphere of a 50-mile radius that wouldn't have told you this is not okay.
Yeah.
So this is why it is very important. And so I challenge, and I mean this very strongly, I challenge institutions, companies, organizations, individuals, make sure you are making these structural changes, because this change that we are advocating for and this inclusion and this diversity, it does not happen if we are not in the room. It can't happen. So
or
you
at least part of the conversation, right? At least part of the conversation.
At least part of the conversation.
Yeah.
And, and so I feel like, and we said this in the forum, because of course there are only so many positions to be had. But if you know that you are casting or directing something and you already have your casting staff or your casting director, bring in an assistant, bring in someone to be there. If you don't know someone, raise them up, have someone by your side that will be able to contribute to the conversation. Like, there is for me at this point in this work, there's no excuse. There's no excuse. You've got to have, even if it's just a consultant that you hire for that particular production, you have to do your due diligence.
I think it even starts before that, though, because I think when an organization is going into talks of choosing a season, the content being produced needs to be thought about, and it needs to be thought about 10 steps ahead to know what challenges you might have with casting or with a creative team, or you can't just pick shows and hope that that you'll be able to produce them correctly. If you know that you don't have a wide pool of people of color, then maybe doing shows that are for people of color isn't what you need to be doing in that capacity. Not that you shouldn't be doing it, because we don't want to be taking away opportunities, but I think thinking about the content being produced is important. That conversation starts way before you get into the room, and that's expanding the material that you do, but also challenging the conventions in which you do that material. And so, like, taking a show, for example, like Oklahoma, where it's typically, you think of it and you think of it in a certain way. And so challenging that convention and challenging, okay, what do these people look like? What would it look like if this happens? Being conscious with casting too. So I think, I think those conversations need to happen way before.
You're bringing up something I want to jump into. Colorblind, color conscious casting. Which do we prefer? Do we throw it all out?
There are more, right? Color bold.
Yes, I read one today, actually. Color, I can't remember what it was, but it was different. I was like, oh, that is a different take. I'm a proponent for color conscious, and I honestly haven't
tell us what.
Yeah, sure. So past color conscious and color blind, I'm not too familiar with other terms. Like I said, I just read one today for the first time. But so color blind is not taking into account the skin color or the ethnicity, race of the person in front of you, in which by doing that you erase the ethnicity and race of the skin color of the person in front of you, because you are choosing to ignore it, as opposed to being conscious with your color casting, and saying and having conversations and tough conversations sometime of, okay, what if we cast this person in this role that Carousel, for example. You have Billy Bigelow, who's the lead, and you have Julie Jordan. Billy Bigelow beats Julie Jordan. And in the recent revival, Joshua Henry played Billy Bigelow. And so those conversations need to be had because an audience is going to come in and what they're going to see is a Black man beating a white woman, right? And so if those conversations are had and then the nuances of the story can tell a broader story and, you know, say, okay, this is not okay and this is why it's not okay, then absolutely. But if you don't take into account those conversations and that point of view, it can become problematic.
Yeah, exactly. And I agree with you for the same reason. It's about being intentional with color conscious versus blind. I mean, I understand they had the same idea, the same motive behind it. But blind sort of implies it's all just a happy accident. Like, oh, did I do that? I don't know. Whatever happens, happens. Versus saying, no, we're going to put some thought behind it, even if that thought is we have considered this role and it does not matter. It doesn't support the story whatsoever, so it does not matter what this character looks like. Versus saying, yes, there are themes within this story that would be impacted, perhaps enhance the storyline. And since you brought up that example, because I did see Carousel, and that was one of the thoughts that I had going into it, that that it looked ugly, I guess, for lack of a better word, with that element behind it. But
I mean, the show is problematic to begin with. It's like the content is problematic. So, you know, when you add that layer, you know, it becomes, you know, that conversation needs to be thought about because it is ugly. It is, you know, painting people in not a great light.
Yeah, exactly. And I think when it's not intentional, you know, even you brought him up, and he and I went to school together. We did in college. It made me think about Music Man, and you know, he was Harold Hill in Music Man, and was amazing. But there's that opening scene of what I don't know, before Iowa Stubborn or something, where they're, you know, he's walking around, Harold Hill's walking around trying to ask questions and trying to get to town, and just the Iowans are closed off and say, like, basically, get out of here, and then there's a weird bump, and it had this added racial overtone to it of being like, oh, is this just like a really racist town that we stumbled into here? And when it's not intentional as well.
Yeah, these are things that you know we have to take into account and we have to think about. Guys, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. Where I know if you see me looking over, I'm trying to see if there's any questions. I see you guys are interacting, and thank you so much for that. I'm going to read some of what we have. Jane Trinette said, what if the dark-skinned girl can't sing or vice versa? And that was back on our conversation about colorism. And, you know, and I just think the simple answer to that is you find somebody who can, you find somebody who can, because there is someone in every category of everything who is talented. We just have to be intentional about our search. You know, if you are casting Ariel, you're going to make sure you find a redhead girl, you know, who can sing. So, you know, it's the same with us. We just expect the same due diligence in that intentionality. And we had someone else who said representation on the creative team is crucial. And I really applaud our community because I'm seeing a lot more of this. And I will say one thing that I really do like is that organizations are now starting to post their creative team. So we get to see, who is behind the table in these productions. And I think that is so, for transparency purposes, and to let the community know that they're putting in the work, that is amazing. So more of that, please, more of that. And we've got, here's another question. What are your opinions or strategies behind the mindset, I'm POC, so it's okay for me to audition for this role, even though I'm not a specific POC race? Did we kind of touch on that? We kind of touched on that a little bit, I think.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
It's that 50-50, just, with the 50% that lands on the actor. It's just knowing your truth and being honest about it. And I think it's hard, right? Because it's like we're taught to audition, and there are so many people out there, and thinking that by not going to this audition or not putting myself up for this opportunity, that it's going to close the door on these other opportunities, and that's just not how it works.
Right.
I think being truthful and being honest with yourself then allows you to find the doors that you're supposed to walk through, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
So I have a question, and I want to talk a little bit more about, or a little bit about casting culture. And I say that because I think that is very important as we go into making these changes. As you know, from auditioning as actors, casting kind of has the reputation of like, I'm going in there and I'm giving my all, and casting's like, thank you. Next. So that's kind of the casting culture that we have created, that everyone. Say again?
I said there's a very low bar. I can't tell you how many times people have said, like, thanks for looking up. I feel like that is really the bare minimum effort I have fulfilled today. Yeah.
So let's talk about that. How does that contribute to, a lot of this stuff being so problematic? And how do we fix it? How do we shift the casting culture?
Yeah, well, I think, one of the first things is it's about being vocal when there are, instances where it's like subpar, just basic human decency, things like that, and being more vocal about it. And I think that's one of the goals of this group here that are here today, to say, if you feel like, we want to be that resource so that you don't feel alone, and trying to make your voice known and amplified. So if you feel like that's something you experience, then talk about it, and let's try to fix things. I think, all of these, casting rooms are made up of people, and people who I would hope are trying to be, decent and good people. So if they fall short, if I fell short, I would think I want to hear about that. I want to hear about that experience, and so that we can be better. I think we're all trying to just, run organizations or groups that are, one, successful, but and then also have good reputations out there in the industry, because that's what helps us bring people in. So, reputation is everything. And if it's less than, then, we would want to hear about that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, as, this past year has taught us anything, is even with the We See You movement in New York, like holding people and holding companies and holding producers and entities accountable, right? And so that's sort of what Stephen was saying, is that starting those conversations. And I'm really interested to see, as our industry starts slowly, revving back up to hopefully what it was, or even better. I'm interested to see how that culture changes, because it is being what's the word, fought against. It is being I'm losing the word. just fought against. Yeah.
Challenge.
So it's
Challenge.
Thank you. Thank you. Challenged. Yeah. So I don't think that we're the only entertainment community in the country or even in the world that's doing this and fighting the good fight and challenging the power structure and that culture. So I think the more that, the more people that do, and the more people that speak up and have those conversations, I think we will see.
Yeah.
And I think
hope that we
one of those things too, where, accountability among colleagues is so important. If you know that your colleague is one of the people who is making an audition room intimidating unnecessarily, so like, of course we understand that there's going to be an element of intimidation with what we do. But if you are unnecessarily so making this room uncomfortable, particularly for people of color, and you know that about your colleague, then I feel like you have a responsibility to speak up and to, shift that culture within your organization. We need to start making it uncomfortable to be that person. You know what I mean? And a lot of times the people of color don't have, we don't have the leverage to speak up about these things. And this is why allyship is so very important. This is why it's important, because again, we're facing labels, we're facing whatever stigma can come along with raising your voice. And we want to fight to get rid of that. But while we are getting to that point, you're already there, and you already know this, and you already know that it's problematic. So this is your opportunity to really be an ally and make sure that, hey, sorry, but this is not how we're doing this anymore. This is not how we are structuring our environment anymore. And that's not to say that everybody in the audition room has to be your best friend, but at least give them the respect and the courtesy that when they're coming in to give you their best, that there is attention and that there is, I'm using the word gratitude because that's how I operate. But thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. It's so good to see you. And, just basically, like you said, basic human decency, and I think, and I'm going to put this out here, I don't know how logistically possible this is, because it is probably difficult. Let's say I go into a room and I have a bad experience, and I leave that room and I want to share about that experience. It's probably not wise for me to go to Facebook and be like, so-and-so casting director did XYZ to me today. As much as we may want to do that and may be even justified in doing that, that's probably not the best way to go about that. So then who do you talk to? Who do you tell that you had this experience? And truth be told, we don't have anything set up or in place where people can share the experience that they had. So maybe simple, Google survey, Google form, something. How was your audition experience today? Have something, some sort of follow-up, that it can be a 1, 2, 3 click thing that they leave. Once they click, you get the stats and you see, of this casting director, 85% of the people had a horrible experience. Yeah. And if you see that, then okay, this person is problematic and we need to deal with that. So that's something to think about for, companies that are casting. Have some sort of exit survey or something, nothing major and extensive, but just that will reflect what the experience that they had in that room, and how you can take that information, take that data, and then cultivate change.
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion, because, and I can only speak for my experience and me and my peers, but believe it or not, we put a lot of thought into what that experience is going to be like for candidates that are coming into the room. From the copy, is there enough information in here so that people can go in off and do that work and feel like they have something to go off of when we can do that. The sides and information, is this been put together in a way that like gives me something to work with? Do I have it in enough time? So it's not just like a pop quiz and saying and go, because we know, or I know that that your people are most successful when they're set up for that, when it's teed up in a way that they can just knock it out when they walk in the room. So part of that is, are they prepared enough, and is this space does it feel welcoming, and kind of analyzing all of this experience to say, is it set up for you? And so if there are points where we miss, I would absolutely want to hear about that. And I don't think, I can only speak for myself, but I wouldn't take that in a way, I wouldn't take that defensively. We just want to make things better. This is an experience. It should be a great one, because the goal is to have people come back again and again. So that's a huge part of it, and a way to get feedback. And that's one of the things that coming back to town here, really impressed me. I going back to my performance days, I never had like an email address for a casting director in town where I can just ask a question or reach out for feedback. And I love that about this community, that we're tight enough that we can go and say, hey, I have some questions about what you want to see. Because 10 times out of 10, I'm happy to provide answers. And so I love that we have that dialogue, and it doesn't always feel that way, but it really should be. It's about breaking down that sort of barrier or weird, shroud of mystery around that casting process.
Yeah, I agree. And I think to your point, Mika, I think it's to what Stephen just spoke about, and to what you touched on briefly. I think it's different that if you're coming out of an audition room, an actor's coming out of an audition room, and they feel that that the audition experience was less than because of their color of their skin or because of their race and their ethnicity, that's something completely different. And I would implore those people, if hopefully you never feel that way, but if for whatever reason you do, to then be able to use the casting relations team to be sort of that liaison, and to have those conversations and to start that dialogue and say, okay, it's a problem here. Let's track it. Let's see where that goes. And I think.
Okay, say that again, because I want the community to know that this resource is available. So say that again, please.
Yeah, of course. So the resource is us being the casting relations team, the talent development and casting relations team at CFEA, being a liaison between the artists and the casting team. And so if there ever is a situation where, your audition experience feels like it's been dampened because of the color of your skin or because of the race, your ethnicity, to please use us as a resource so that we can track it, and then also maybe start conversations, if it becomes a pattern. That's something that, Stephen and I have talked about, and making sure that resource is available, because sometimes those conversations are difficult to have, and even though you might have the email of the casting director or whomever, that might not be a conversation that's an easy, hey, what's up, type of combo. So I think that's very different from the audition experience as a whole, which I think Stephen touched on brilliantly just now.
Great stuff, guys. Yeah. Okay, so we are actually at time, but we have 3 really great questions sitting in the comments. So I'm going to ask you, would you mind answering these questions? Yeah. Do you want a hard stop, or can we keep going?
No, let's do it.
Yeah, let's keep going.
Okay. these are some good ones. Thank you guys for these questions. They are great. So this first one is, as allies, how can we encourage BIPOC actors to come out to auditions?
That's a good question. I'm going to answer the question, but it's not directly this question. I think it might start. So it might be a partnership of getting more BIPOC actors to come out. It might be a partnership of maybe allies encouraging their friends to go out, but also I think it starts with casting breakdowns being more inclusive and being like thought out, and making sure that it's inclusive in age, in races, in ethnicities, in gender inclusive tone. That's huge. Even accessibility, whether it be interpreters or differently abled accessibility. So all of that, being thoughtful in the casting breakdown, like Stephen was saying, making sure that there is so much information so that all types of people, regardless of their skin color, and even Black actors and people of color who are artists that aren't that maybe fall under those categories, then don't feel excluded. So I think it starts there in making sure that that casting breakdown is as inclusive and as informative as possible, so that it kind of casts a larger net. And then to sort of answer this question, how allies can encourage, is to just be on the lookout. If you see something that your friends are right for, if you see something that one of your BIPOC artist friends would be right for, share it. If you see somebody looking specifically for, hey, I need a African-American woman from her 30s to 40s who can play the guitar and scat and rap, like, share it. So that way that those people, then your network is informed of those opportunities.
Yeah, the amplification angle is so helpful because in today's marketing climate, so much of that information is shared via social media, and so you just kind of amplifying within your own bubble, really within the community, it really does help to get it in front of the right people. And then just to reinforce what you said, or on the first point, I was having a conversation recently with someone in the casting world out in California, and we were talking about being intentional with the language and how you frame your postings to make it very clear that you are looking for artists of color for these roles. And it sounds silly, but they were saying that the reality is when these agents for TV and film and commercial and stuff, when they look at breakdowns and don't see anything about a character's ethnicity, they assume that they're white. They assume that's what they're looking for because that's the reality of where the industry was. But if they're going the extra mile to say, this is what this character looks like, or we're looking for, anyone and everyone can portray this role. It's really to try and drive home the fact that we are not, as the person who is working on that project, that they're not just strictly looking for, it's not business as usual.
Yeah, it's being specific. I mean, I can, to that point, like I found myself looking at casting breakdowns and, thinking, because there's not specificity in the breakdown, and or inclusive wording within the breakdown, I find myself, oh, well, okay, it's automatically defaulted white. And that's something that I need to personally unlearn. But it's also, how much effort and how much time it goes to go to an audition and to put yourself out there. Is it going to be worth to go to that audition if, the wording in front of you is telling you otherwise, that you wouldn't be considered? So
Yeah,
I think that
yeah.
specificity is important.
Especially in a world where, things on Broadway and everywhere, it's all of the content is coming from established intellectual property. And so if you have already seen a movie or a cartoon that has an established character that has been established as white, then it's not your first instinct to believe that you could portray that role as well.
Yeah, to challenge that default. Yeah, for sure. I don't know if we lost Mika. Oh, there she is. Is she coming back?
I'm here. I'm here.
There you are.
You will not believe the tornado that I just went through my hair. Oh my gosh, my computer was dying, my lights were going out. I was like, oh my gosh, let me fix this. So sorry about that. I was listening.
That's okay. We had a really great conversation.
No, I heard everything. I heard everything. It was so awesome. So the next question is, this is from a person who is in a creative casting position and an ally. And they are bringing up a great point that so far we have managed to tell the same stories involving people of color over and over and over. And so they're bringing up the fact that now is the time to change the narrative. So the question is, maybe instead of fitting people of color into a casting box, can we create what is next for representation for people of color?
Yes, absolutely. The answer to that is yes.
Yes.
And I guess maybe the question is, how do we go about creating that?
Right. And I think to the person asking the question, to their point, the stories that are being told are similar because they're historically, the stories are being written by possibly people that don't have those experiences, that don't look like those characters that they're creating, right? So I think definitely now is about investing in new artists and artists of color and letting them tell their stories. Personally, I can't tell you what a difference it has made from when I first got into musical theater back in middle school to now, to be able to see Lin-Manuel Miranda, somebody that looks like me, who is quite literally where I'm from, and see the work that he's done and create the opportunities that he's done. And to be able to see that has given me even more hope, and has given me opportunities, truly. So I think it's about investing in the writers and the people who create those stories, for them to look like the people that they're writing about.
Right.
Yeah, and as these organizations are curating their seasons, I think it's so helpful to look beyond their traditional rooms and reach out to us to say, what shows are you passionate about? A great example, an organization reached out to me last year and just said, hey, we're brainstorming. We'd love to know, like, what shows out there do you love that you haven't seen done, or what have you read that you love and that just doesn't get produced? Just to have a diversity of content out there. And I think it would behoove them to lean on the actual community and just say, hey, yeah, what's great out there that we don't know about, that because we may not have that exposure.
And I think the overarching theme and what you guys have been saying throughout all of this is that there is a whole lot more thought that needs to go into all of this. The entire machine. Casting cannot evolve without all of the other pieces evolving simultaneously. So you have said over and over again, put a little bit more thought into this. This needs to be thought about beforehand. This needs to be, so if we are thinking about it like that, we have to get people into the mindset of, I've got to put way more thought. This is not just about cranking out a product or something that I've always wanted to do. I've got to put way more thought and intentionality to my process, my content, my product, my community. All of that has to be thought about and well thought out in this process. So, there's a lot that needs to go into that, and a lot that has to change, but it starts with our mentality, our minds, our thought processes, So I love that. I love that. So we've got one more question, and I thought I'd end with this one because it's really good. Guys, also, just to let you know that we will do this again. And, this is so important to continue to have these conversations. And I know that, sometimes it may feel like, oh, well, we're all talked out, or we're all, Facebook lived out, but we have to continue to have these conversations in our community. We have to, we've had some really great ideas that came out of this hour and 15 minutes. We've had some tangible things that we can take away and do come out of this, this discussion. So this is why it's so important for us to continue to keep these lines of communication open and continue to call each other in and to continue to, hold one another accountable. So I want to end with this question, and I don't know why StreamYard is not telling me who's asking. So I'm so sorry. I don't know who asked this question, but do you have any advice for actors, singers, and dancers who want to transition into a casting role to help this advocacy for the future? And I love that they didn't just say, how do I get into casting? It's also to help this advocacy for the future. So great question, whoever you are.
I'll briefly just say my piece on it. The reason why I'm part of Kelsay Morales company now, which was casting, we've evolved it into more of a broader production company, and we still offer casting services. But the reason why my wife and I started, I'm half of the Kelsay Morales Casting, why we started this was because we didn't see a clear pathway and transition into casting, but we wanted to. We wanted to be behind the table in some capacity. And so we didn't see those opportunities, so we created them. And I know that's a big statement that you create your own opportunities, but truly reach out to your network and say, these are the things that I'm interested in. These are the places in which I want to evolve in, and I want to cultivate. And how can you help me? Right? Start there. Start with your network, and then opportunities will present themselves, right? Whether, you might start small and then grow into it. But I think I'm a big proponent of, if you don't see a path, then create it. And I've been very fortunate to then be able to use and rely on this community and network of people to continue growing, right? So if you don't see a path, make one.
Yeah, I know. I was going to say, do what he did. Yeah, because it's so inspiring. It inspires me, and it's just so impressive. And my path was really different. It was not. I didn't set out to be in this role. It's just kind of happened. But I will say, every little thing I did along the way and every experience prepared me for it. Even when I didn't know that was the end result, or the end result for me. And so, being an actor, singer, dancer, that is one of the few constants I've seen in some of the peers in this industry, is they've all have that experience. And I think it's critical, because it allows you to operate your casting process from a place of empathy. You've had that experience, and so how how that people feel being on the other side of things. And I think that's critical and the first thing. But then, really, saying yes to all of these other opportunities that you get along the way. If there's an opportunity to shadow or intern and do anything, even if it's not, casting specific, but if it's more of an administrative or an operational role, all of those tools are critical for the role ultimately, being in casting. And so all of the operational experience I've had in the past, that was vital, or budgeting and finance experience that comes into play as well when you're kind of creating a budget template for to cast a new work. It's possible you get asked to do that stuff, and so it's incredibly important to have all of the skills in the toolbox. And so I think it's to kind of look at your career path and just say, what's the next step on this journey, and being open to it, because it is such a strange role in that everyone has come from a different path or a different walk of life. And I found even being a casting director, there are very little resources to continue your development out there in the industry. Trust me, I've searched them out to say, how can I be better? What are there courses I could take? Are they, is there continuing education for this role? And it's not the case. I mean, I think in a lot of other jobs, you continue to kind of compile credentials, and it's just not, that's not the case here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good stuff, guys. Thank you so very much. And I think that one of the things that we definitely need to remember is that, again, there's that 50-50 element. Of course, we're going to go out and create our own product. We're going to create our own opportunities. We're going to carve our way. But we also need to continue to challenge the power structure that exist. We need to continue to chip away at that. We need to continue dismantling and rebuilding, so this community becomes the cohesive community that we have been dreaming of and hoping for. So thank you for being a part of that. Thank you for being active in, creating that. And thank you for being, such a great example of both entrepreneurship. Is that how you say that word? And corporate, and doing this on a corporate level. I love that we have both dynamics represented here, and that we can talk about this from both of those dynamics. So again, guys, we will continue to have these discussions. Please make sure that you share this discussion with your colleagues, with your friends. We will have this available on our website. We'll upload it to our website probably later this week. So make sure that you share this conversation with your friends. I think it is worth, and your colleagues, it is worth, taking the time to listen and to learn and to grow. And this is not the end of it. If you have other questions, please feel free. You can email them to cfeforum@gmail.com. That's cfeaforum@gmail.com. You can email your questions there, and we'll get a jump start on the next time that we're going to do this. And also, if you have something specific for Stephen or for Joshian, they both have CFEA emails on our website, so you can check that out, and you can email them. That's at cfeanow.org. cfeanow.org. And I want to, of course, encourage you all to visit the Black Book. This directory, you guys, I'm so proud of it, and I'm so excited about it. We had this dream of doing this back at the forum back in July, of having a resource, because too many times we have heard, well, I just didn't know anyone, and I just couldn't find anyone, or there wasn't anyone. Well, now we're going to do away with all of that. We're going to have this we have this resource available at your fingertips, where you can go and even do a very filtered search to find exactly what you are looking for. So if you need a Black director for your next production, they are there. If you need Black casting, they are there. If you need actors, singers, lighting, set design, sound design, anything that you need will be there in this resource. So I want to encourage all of my Black industry professional friends, if you have not submitted for the Black Book, please, please, please submit today. Go to cfeablackbook.org and submit your information there. It is a great resource with everything that you would need: headshots, resumes, work samples, so you can see this excellence that we're working with. And then if you are an employer and you're looking for someone, you have that available to you. And also you can post your auditions and employment opportunities there. So talent, make sure that you're also checking the Black Book for opportunities that are coming up. We are building this, guys, brick by brick. And I'm so excited about it. I'm so proud of it. We started this last year, not even a year ago, with just wanting to bring awareness. And here we are less than a year later, and we are giving this community tangible resources where we can change. So change is now. And I'm so excited. So thank you, Joshian, for being here with us tonight. Thank you, Stephen, for being here with us tonight. We're so appreciative of you guys and all of the work that you're doing. And we're so glad that you are in the spaces that you are in. And we want to continue to raise our voices and challenge the power structure. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Bye. You want to say bye, guys?
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.